Once upon a time, I was the king of junior high school. Not a knight or a lord, but a king stood upon the balcony of a high tower, waving with grace and dignity at the adoring masses below. I was lord of the yearbook, duke of the morning announcements, and noble historian of the National Junior Honor Society. King of all that I saw. As I walked my royal halls, all looked upon my zit-encrusted face and shiny greasy hair in awe. I'll bet he's really good at history, one would say, averting their eyes as I drew near out of respect. I heard he's a writer, another would return. And have you heard? People say he's a liberal and doesn't even believe in God. He's so radical, the girls would say, giggling as I passed. My importance was universally understood. For instance, at the National Junior Honor Society lock-in, which is, by the way, the most important social function for the junior high elite, I was nominated to become society president, which is one of the greatest honors an upwardly mobile 7th grader can be bestowed. I didn't win, but it was close. Some independent polls had me at 20% of the popular vote. Besides, a king isn't elected, a king is assumed. The next year, the society's historian had to step down because they were moving to Kansas or Kentucky or one of the other unimportant K-states. In a special election, my excellences were confirmed and I was elected replacement historian. The true seat of power, anyone would have told you. There was also famously the time I was personally selected to play Romeo in Romeo and Juliet on the 3rd day of English class. The first day I was Mercutio, and the second I was briefly called upon to play the nurse. There are male nurses too, my teacher helpfully chirped, but on the third day I was called upon to play my rightful leading role. Is it even so? Then I defy you, stars, I thundered. Then of course there was the time I was selected as runner-up for Science Student of the Year. Runner-up might not seem like much, but in a class as large as 24 kids, that's a big deal. And besides, as my science teacher was quick to remind me, you know, Buzz Aldrin was runner-up as well. And look at him. To which I replied, Buzz who? I was also widely known as a charitable king. I even received a gold-ish medal for doing more community service than anyone else. While other kids were out raising money for tsunami victims or rebuilding houses after an earthquake, I, the clever tactician of a king that I was, realized I could get a lot more volunteer hours by simply manning the copier at a local elementary school. I racked up no less than 235 hours worth of life-saving copies in my tenure. A 13-year-old saint. I was beloved by all, though I only kept a tight circle of 3 or so friends. It was a deliberate choice, mind you. A king can't be asked to give time to just anyone who comes along. I had quite firmly established with myself that I was happy when at the end of my final year of junior high, I was struck with a thought. What would be my legacy? When I was to move to high school, what would become of the halls I had come to call my own? For what is a king if he lives and dies and is forgotten? Or, more importantly, what is a kingdom without its king? So I set out to find a way of making my presence everlasting. After briefly considering the logistics of etching my initials on every bathroom stall or renaming the eastern half of the school the Dan Resler wing, I decided I would need a replacement. Someone to take over my position and pass down the role throughout the years. After reviewing the prospective candidates for things like grade point average, ambition, and hair quality, I settled on a guy named Steven, a year younger than me. I spent the rest of my year taking him under my wing, telling him how to act and how to speak. I provided him with the wise counsel of a now aging 14-year-old, and watched as his face morphed and contorted into my own, greasy hair and all. My legacy lay in him. And when it came time for me to retire the throne, I shook his hand and watched as he donned his cloak and began to climb the tower, walk out onto the balcony, and wave. The new junior king.